estamos en Tampa, Florida todavía. Aquí estamos en el centro. Ahorita vamos a agarrar un barco para ir a ver las mansiones de los artistas y famosos y empresarios. En el primer video les enseñé las casas de frente, caminando por la calle. Ahora se los voy a enseñar, pero para el otro lado, que es pura agua, para que ustedes miren cómo son las casas de atrás aquí en Florida. No nomás las casas, vamos a grabar barcos, bueno, todo lo que haya en el mar lo vamos a grabar ahorita para que disfruten este video. Muchas gracias. Ahorita nos vamos a subir a un barco. Ahí ya estamos viendo los apartamentos. Los apartamentos están enfrente del agua, mire. Condominios de apartamentos. Ya están los barcos parqueados, miren. Aquí todo está muy bonito para acá. Todo está en la costa del mar, miren. Ahí va un barco, miren. Dolphin Tour se llama. Ahí está el Annalee Arena.
All of our vessels are called Never Never Land because of the magic that happens out of the water.
Aquí está un puente.
You may never want to land again. Now, this is a U.S. Coast Guard inspected vessel. We have lots of life jackets on board if necessary. Most of the adult life jackets are found up forward. If you're 90 pounds or less, we have a special compartment in front of me for smaller life jackets.
Aquí vamos a entrar por abajo del puente.
Just leaving the dock in front of the Tampa Bay History Center. Now, the History Center up there chronicles people living in this area for more than 12,000 years. Started with the mound builders. Now, the Native Americans called this area Cotinchobe, which means the big place where the water meets the land. Now, right behind the Tampa Bay History Center, you'll see these new 2 tall towers that have built. Now, this neighborhood, you may have seen on your way in today, is undergoing some construction or some detours. This neighborhood to our left, the 50-acre Water Street neighborhood, is undergoing a $3.5 billion transformation right now. $3.5 billion. It's primarily a collaboration between Jeff Vinnick, who owns our hockey team, the Lightning, and Bill Gates. And together, Jeff Vinnick and Bill Gates and their companies are investing $3.5 billion in this neighborhood. So right behind the Tampa Bay History Center, these 2 new tall towers, that's the Heron Complex. They are luxury apartments, and I understand they have some of the highest rents in Tampa right now. They go up to $13,200 a month, and I understand that no 2 balconies are the same on those buildings, so they want every renter to have their own individual experience here, not the cookie cutter experience that you might have in another place. Now, right behind that is the new USF Health Center. And then to the left of the History Center, we have the new addition, which is an upscale hotel, soon to open, along with other multi-use businesses. And then behind us right now, we have the new JW Marriott that's just recently opened. So this area is just booming right now with $3.5 billion in investment. Now the neighborhood
Están
itself
invirtiendo
has just
3.1
received the
billón de
world's
dólares
very first
aquí
worldwide
en Tampa.
certification as a WELL neighborhood, WELL. In this neighborhood to our left is really supposed to have a high quality of life for the people that live and work there. In fact, if you walk around the streets over there, you'll find lots of tree-lined streets. They've got extra wide sidewalks. There's bike trails. They've got water features, lots of open spaces, lots of plantings of plants and trees. So it's kind of a really interesting place where they're putting a really high emphasis on the lifestyle of wellness. So for both the workers and the inhabitants, it's kind of like a little city within a city. Now on this side of the bridge we have our Channel Side district. This is where we welcome our cruise ship passengers. Now right before the pandemic we had more than 1 million passengers a year pass through our port, one of the more active cruise ship ports in the United States. Right now we're being serviced by 4 different cruise ship lines, and along this long concrete dock in front of us, this is normally where they put the Norwegian cruise ship lines. And around the corner to the left there are more cruise ship terminals where they put Royal Caribbean, Carnival, and Celebrity cruises.
Quedarte en esos apartamentos blancos son $13,000 al mes para rentar ahí. $13,000 al mes. Cada balcón es diferente.
They've got lots of great foodie tastes in there. Lots of interesting craft beer. There's a Splitsville so you can go bowling. They have that big screen TV. They always seem to have something interesting going on here. Last Monday they had a big water ski show out front. So it's kind of an interesting place to explore, not far from the History Center where I picked you up at. And then to our left we have this number 2 terminal port building. So again you can see some of the apparatuses where they use to help get the cruise ship passengers on and off the ships up there.
Está el centro de Tampa.
And then coming up on our left, we have a white building with a glass and metal dome up next. And this is our Florida Aquarium, right here on an arm of the sea. The Florida Aquarium is rated as one of the better aquariums in the world right now. They have more than 20,000 species of fish, plants, and animals on display. Heavily involved with the conservation efforts of our dolphin and our manatee in the area. So that's a Florida Aquarium right over here on our left. And then, tied up at the dock is American Victory with the razzle-dazzle camouflage hull. American Victory was built in 1945 in just 55 days. This entire ship was built in just 55 days back in 1945. This ship served in World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, sailed across the world twice, survived 2 typhoons and a hurricane. Originally, there were 531 Victory ships built. There are only 3 remaining, and this one is a fully functioning museum ship. So you can go on board this ship, and every once in a while it goes out into Tampa Bay. So that's American Victory right there, built in 1945 in just 55
Lo hicieron en 55 días este barco.
kind of from the side, so it's going to rock and roll here for a moment. Now, after the first mansion, you'll see an empty lot. Now, last year there was a $7 million mansion sitting on that lot, and that home had previously been owned by Joel Glazer of the billionaire Glazer family. They owned the Tampa Bay Buccaneer football team that won the Super Bowl championship with Tom Brady as quarterback, and also Manchester United, the soccer team. Now, a couple years ago, Joel Glazer sold his mansion to his next door neighbor. That next mansion, the one with the little blue guy in front of it, is owned by his older brother Brian Glazer. So Brian Glazer, the older brother, buys the younger brother's mansion next door. Now Brian Glazer has the most expensive home on Harbor Island at $16 million. 3 stories, more than an acre of property. Last year he spent more than $150,000 in Hillsborough real estate taxes for his home, and he's been paying an extra $100,000 for his empty brother's house he owned next door. Well, we found out he just wanted to do some land banking because he had his brother's house torn down that he owned, and he's just added now that half-acre lot into his own parcel.
$16 millones, la más cara que vamos a ver ahorita aquí.
Along with a $16 million mansion sitting on top. Now, the remaining mansions are all very nice. They're just not owned by anybody's name we would readily recognize, but we can certainly enjoy the view as we go by, as they're all quite unique.
Puras mansiones millonarias. Se les enseñé el primer video por de frente, ahora aquí se ven pero por atrás, con el agua, miren. Qué bonitas están también por atrás. Qué hermosas casas, mansiones.
Now the last mansion is the one with the little fort in the backyard and the American flag up on the pole. So that's the last mansion on Harbor Island. Now after that, all the homes with the green awnings, these are all duplexes, multi-family homes.
Esta es la última mansión aquí en la cuadra.
$2.5 million.
Estas ya son,
so $2.5 million to share your wall with the neighbor next door.
Estos son townhomes, estas ya no son mansiones. Barcos parqueados como si fueran un carro, miren, ahí lo parquean como si nada.
Now to our left, we have a really interesting set of islands. These are Davis Islands to our left. Davis Islands started during the 1920s Florida land boom. Everybody wants to buy and sell Florida property. Well, there's a native developer by the name of David Davis who wants to get in on the action. And he's looking for a really neat place next to downtown Tampa where he can build this Mediterranean revival resort community. Well, one day he's down on Bayshore Boulevard looking out into Hillsborough Bay, and he sees Little Grassy Key and Big Grassy Key, these 2 undeveloped islands out here. He says, that's it, that'll be perfect. So he starts talking to the different landowners, and he ends up buying the 834 acres for $350,000. Now the thing is, much of the property is underwater during high tide, so he's going to have to dredge 89 million cubic feet of mud and sand from the surrounding waterways to put on top of the islands to be able to make them livable. Great little canals and channels weaving through them, little bridges interconnecting the islands. He wants to have this marina here, all great things, and he's really good at promoting. So on October 4th, 1924, he puts his first set of 306 lots up for sale. He sells them all white railing along the shore. This is Tony Janus Park. That's where Tony Janus brought that airboat